Good morning. Hope you're doing well today. Come on with us to 1 Corinthians 9. A question has come up recently, or it was actually asserted that a church does not have the authority to pay a preacher. I wanted to tackle that idea today because some folks have that idea. So come on with us to 1 Corinthians 9 at verse 7. It says, "Whoever goes to war at his own expense, who plants a vineyard and does not eat of its fruit, or who tends a flock and does not drink of the milk of the flock? Do I say these things as a mere man, or does not the law say the same also? For it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. Is it oxen God is concerned about, or does he say it altogether for our sakes?" For our sakes, no doubt. We'll stop there. Some folks, to look at that figure of the ox, some folks would absolutely muzzle that ox, and they would just starve that ox to death while that ox is working for them. Verse 10 talks about hope. Some folks would absolutely take away any shred of hope that ox has, and they would just make that ox as miserable as is humanly possible on this earth. And the reason that they do that is because why would you muzzle an ox? Well, you don't want the ox eating the grain. Well, why don't you want the ox eating the grain? It's because you don't want to share your grain. The reason that they want to muzzle the ox, the reason they don't want to pay a preacher, frankly, and by the way, it shows they have not studied Scripture, but what it really shows is they just don't like sharing. They are more interested in material things. Verse 11, it says, "If we have sown spiritual things for you, is it a great thing if we reap your material things?" Paul says he had been working for them, and he says, is it a great thing if we reap your material things? A lot of folks, the bottom line is they're just more interested in material things. They do not want to share their material things. They don't want to support the one who's doing the spiritual work, if you will, the one who is sowing spiritual things. They actually despise spiritual things. They don't want to support it. They don't want to support spiritual things. They don't want to invest in spiritual things. Verse 14, he says, "Even so the Lord has commanded that those who preach the gospel should live from the gospel." And there is our authority for a church supporting a preacher. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 14. But verse 15, Paul says, "I have used none of these things." Yes, he had the authority, he had the right, but he did not take advantage of it. He considered it a liberty. But you can tell in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, he's having doubts about it. He says at verse 7, "Did I commit sin in humbling myself that you might be exalted because I preached the gospel of God to you free of charge? I robbed other churches, taking wages from them to minister to you." Paul did not make them support him, and he's wondering if he did something wrong. And I want you to think about just how significant it is. And Paul had real good reasons to do this. You can read the context of 2 Corinthians 11 verses 5 through 15 for yourself. Paul had real good reasons. But I want you to think real carefully about what he says. He says, "Did I commit sin in humbling myself that you might be exalted?" Sometimes it is sinful, to use the language he uses. Sometimes it is sinful to humble ourselves so that others may be exalted. Think about it. Put it in the context. Hope you enjoyed this study. Hope you have a good weekend. God bless you. Be a blessing to others. Hope to see you Monday morning.